Welcome to Comic Indie Podcast. My name is Kenneth Javier.
And I'm Alex. Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi all, I'm Daniel.
For those of y'all who have just joined us, this is the Comic Indie Podcast where we talk about comics that are indie, independent things, and just all-out things that interest us. But with that being said, let's jump right into our discussion today. Dan, what is an indie comic to you?
Good question. See, for me, an independent comic, an indie comic, is its own special kind of section. Because everyone knows the standard comics. Everyone knows the two big boys on the field, DC and Marvel. And if you're part of DC and Marvel, you're probably not indie. So, and then if you go to the small ones, your very little presses, the people who, walk into a comic shop without a license or anything else, they say, I got this book, will you sell it? That's indie. The biggest trick is where between that and the DC Marvel do we define indie? And that is an amazing question. Where I define it is availability. How do you get access to something like this? Is it widespread? Is it part of a larger conglomerate? If it's something that's not quite as has a lot of notoriety, has a lot of known people involved, it's usually like one or two guys doing this for the passion of it or love of it, I would definitely consider that an indie comic.
Okay.
I don't know if we're going to have much of a debate because we're probably all going to have probably the same definition for indie. Okay. At least that's what it seems like so far.
Oh, I didn't know it was a debate, Alex. I thought we're all friends around the table here. But I think what you said was definitely interesting is, availability. So right now, and I'm not trying to, show off my stuff just yet, but my stuff is so indie that you could search it and you won't even find it. So am I indie?
I would definitely consider you indie in this particular regard because you're still building an audience, you're still building what you have, but at the same time, it's you, your dream, your vision, your pencils, your writing, your everything, and nobody else has any other say in it. And once you get to a point where you say, you can hold up the placard, this is my comic, there are many like it, but this one is mine.
Oh, man. Then that's a Full Metal Jacket reference. Very, very topical. I like it.
But once you get to that point where you can say, this is mine, this is what I do, and you have your booths over in the various conventions, you start, shilling your wares, you're still considered indie for a long time until you get to the point where either you're picked up by a major label or you become a major label. As in a great example, we were talking earlier, Mirage Studios. Most people still consider them indie. They're the people who brought us Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They went off to buy Heavy Metal magazine. I think they're no longer indie at this point. Because while maybe not in the United States, known in Europe, oh hell yes, they're known. Even though they're from New Jersey. Go fig. But yeah, so you have to really work with, the broader sense of things for indie. And this can be anything from indie superheroes, which a lot of people don't consider that indie, to, your Blue is the Warmest Color, which is a French comic, which is now available in the United States, has its movie available on Netflix. It's still considered an indie book because it still isn't widely known. So there you go.
Yeah, I think you touched on a few important things there. One of them is the advertising part, and advertising is the determining factor whether a person will actually go solo all the way or decide, advertising is just not for me. It's not going to work. I'm not a great advertiser. So I'm going to publish through somebody, say, like Image Comics. And a lot of people argue, Image Comics, these guys are indie. You see all the stuff that they have out there, and a lot of it is done by indie comic writers. But I mean, to me, the definition of what an indie, I guess, not only my opinion, but those who are in the industry would like to call that creator-owned more than anything else. So it's coming from people that have their own stories, that they're not picked up, they're not a major label. However, they've got the backing and the advertising of somebody who is a number 3 spot, right below Marvel and DC.
Right, because they've been in the game for about, 25 years? And
actually.
Yeah, more than. And I just remember it was actually a bunch of, mass exodus from Marvel to where, just a bunch of guys said, hey, I'm not doing this and, for you anymore, Stanley, and we'll just do it for ourselves. So you have the Jim Lees of the world, the Rob Liefelds and the Eric Larsons of them, the Todd McFarlane. Is it Todd or is it Steve?
Todd McFarlane.
Todd, okay, I
yeah.
want to call him
Yeah.
Steve McFarlane.
Well,
but
that's the
that doesn't sound
amalgamation
right.
of Todd McFarlane and Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, Steve McFarlane.
Unholy union.
Yeah.
Maybe if they had a baby.
but you know, and I like that you did bring up Image because, you know, granted, I know Image has a lot of their staple, characters, whether it be Spawn, Savage Dragon, Invincible, obviously The Walking Dead, but they also they put a little one shots or single series books that, you know, will just go 3 books in, 4 books in, 5 books in. Some are good, some are great. One that I read and really enjoyed was called Sex Castle. It was a graphic novel, but, you know, it was released by Image. It just looked like a bunch of cartoons to me, but it was an awesome story. Written by, and I apologize, I don't have the author of it, but check it out, Sex Castle. Go to Amazon or go to Google and just, it's a recommendation.
Was that 6, as in the number 6?
No, like sex, like when people have intercourse.
Okay,
Yeah.
2 people.
When two people love each other very,
gotcha.
very much.
Yeah, but definitely it's not to break it too much of a side, but it's just something that, you know, it's definitely not a Spider-Man that you're reading, but it's awesome. It's different. It's new. You know, for me, indie is something that I haven't seen before. Indie is something that's, you know, original. Granted, I know, you know, there is no original story anymore and everybody's just rehashing new things, but, you know, I like to see different takes on those books, and I think Image does a good job at it, but, you know, some could argue Image is so popular now that, you know, they're one of the big boys, if not.
So
you know.
I think you touched on 2 important things. One is the financial backing, and the other is a popularity factor. So somebody who already has that name established, like Image, already has, you know, the advertising power, like I already mentioned before. But the popularity threshold is an important factor. You know, I guess the question is, at one point, really, can you say it's no longer indie?
And that's a good question, because you had touched on this one earlier, Dan. What is that threshold? At what point does a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not the ones that we used to watch on cartoons, but the prior ones with the black and white
and very, very bloody.
And very, very bloody, right? That's not my Leonardo. Actually, you know what?
Hashtag not my Leonardo.
Not my Leonardo. Actually, in the indie ones, I kept on saying, where are Raphael's size? Why is he carrying sticks? What the hell, man? But that was the indie Raphael, right?
No, actually, they started off with the Sai.
Oh,
They
okay.
brought it into the cartoon. He still had they called them daggers at the time, but no, they were Sais. And later on, thanks to the 90s, which we will not discuss here, but but thanks to the 90s with everyone going, oh my god, these are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they are for kids.
Oh.
There's a notion about this because during, excuse me as I point this out, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the movie, all of them are carrying deadly ninja weapons, but they end up beating up people with sausages rather than the actual weapons they actually own. But so they traded out the very obviously deadly daggers meant for either parrying weapons or stabbing people repetitively to a pair of sticks.
Like nightsticks, like the Big Boss Man in WWF. Or
Exactly,
something like that. Wow.
or Nightwing, if you know, for later on.
That's
the
true.
The Eskrima sticks. As they call them.
Eskrima, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lately, actually, for a little while, he used a set of tonfas, believe it or not. No, wait, excuse me. That was Donatello that used... Nope. Raphael's used tonfas. Donatello... Michelangelo, for a little while, actually had a chain, a weight and chain that he was using for a weapon.
Goodness. Wow. Now we are the weapons podcast.
Yeah, that's
We are disputing what
I am a font of useless knowledge, so just, I have to find a place to put it
But
somewhere.
back on track,
But
Dan.
back on track, yeah. The idea, though, bringing up Image, because Image and Dark Horse are a great idea to say, where is the threshold? Because Dark Horse, for a long period of time, did nothing but independent comics that became closer to mainstream, which is how we get the Hellboys and The Mask and other things like that. They started off as independent comics that the creator said, you know what, I want to do this, and I don't care what anybody else has to say, and they became great. Now, Image, besides having their own Image line, which, Invincible, which looks very mainstream, but it's not, but it still has a mainstream feel. Walking Dead, which doesn't look mainstream, but it is. You had that kind of thing. But then you also have the imprints within Image that make it more independent. Joe's Comics is an entire line of comics, some of which are very good, very much in line with what you might consider with the DC and Marvel set, some of which are absolutely not. You get things like Dream Police and Apocalypse Al. What do these comics have in common? They're all written by J. Michael Straczynski. So it's his way of doing, hi, this is my independent title, but I have enough money to get it with these people to get it out there. Alan Moore, for a long time, only worked with Wildstorm, which was an imprint of Image, because some people from Image broke off from Image, which is a much longer conversation.
Wow. Okay.
But at that point, when you get through all the subcategories, at what point do these things become independent comics? And again, I think Alex is a great point, and I think you mentioned it too, Ken, is that these people had advertising because they were connected to Image. Image was connected to the major labels through Diamond. You could pull out this is coming to comics. Oh, look, Image says I should buy these. Maybe I should buy those. As the same tone, you have Top Cow, which is also I believe, somebody correct me please, I believe is also an Image imprint. And they've been releasing independent books. I've been reading one recently called Sunstone. It is not for kids. I'm just going to leave that right there.
Yeah, Sex Castle, also not for kids.
Neither is plastic.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now we have the disclaimers. But it's an excellent story. And the art, I'm a big fan of the artist. His name is Stepan Stejic. It's Croatian, so I can't pronounce it.
You just made that up, Dan.
I did not make that up. He is the guy who did a run on Witchblade for years and actually made it with the comic that it is today. It's one of those people who, if I ever meet and say, "Can I get a commission from you?" Just here, money, all of it.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this podcast session, number one, I apologize for screwing up your name, and number two, I'm available. The other thing is that he produced his own book. It is very much an independent book, no matter how much it's glossy, how much it's got beautiful art. But as he even mentions at the beginning of the book, he was so burned out from the traditional comic route that he said, I have to do something for myself. No one else's influences, no one else's story. This is my story that I want to tell. And it's beautiful and emotional and really, really interesting. But at the end of it, I would consider that an independent comic, even though it's with some of the big boys.
So I guess, Top Cow's already got a reputation for itself, too. To me, it still kind of is in a gray area, but more than anything else, I could still consider something like that more creator-owned. It's still your own story. However, you're marketing yourself behind a label that is well-known. Mm-hmm. That's just my take.
Yeah, and I guess now I always use this wrong, and you're gonna have to correct me. Is it's subjective or objective?
Use it in a sentence.
So I consider myself an indie artist. I would love to one day break out and find that advertising, so I can share my story with the world. But to me, I objectively feel.
Subjectively.
I subjectively feel that, indie is kind of almost in the eye of the beholder, of the eye of the audience, So, I think as a creator for myself, and I've talked with other creators, we want to find like-minded audience that will enjoy our stuff, that will follow our stuff. Now, whether they give me a bunch of money or not, I really don't care. I just want you to smile. I want you to laugh. I want you to have a good chuckle. But, at some point, and I'm thinking big here, and I'm sure a lot of indie folks are, if it does become more successful, you do have a huger following, do you need to stay loyal to the game or to the people, do you dance with the people who brought you? That's the question,
Well, this is just a definition of what indie is. A great story, no matter what, will be a great story in my opinion. So like all the stuff that's been coming out from Image, I'm pretty loyal to it right now because it's been pumping out a lot of great stories. And I'm sure what they do is that they'll look at a story and they say, hey, these are the guidelines. Does the art meet our qualification, the story, and then they make their basis off of that. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other ones that they reject.
Right. Well, that's the thing, because Image, you go to the website, they still have what to do to try out to be part of their company the same way that DC and Marvel does. They won't just take anybody and say, well, that's an interesting comic, I'll publish it, because they have to take the risk, they have to take everything else.
Standards and stuff, yeah.
But they'll also, because they're a larger company, they don't always do this, but they can at times, if they have a writer who's really well known, who doesn't have an artist, they might be able to say, hey, there's this guy who just tried out, you may want to take a look at him, or vice versa. Not always the case, in fact, never bet on that, but there is always that chance. So they have a large networking system. Whereas things like Dark Horse, no, they don't. Dark Horse is you submit it to us. If we like it, we publish it.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Yep. That is true, because I remember seeing on the guidelines that if we need to change the cover, or if you don't have coloring, it didn't say that they could find a colorist, but I'm sure they have the network of people that can do it.
Yeah, exactly. They could have somebody, somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, though they may say, that's better in black and white. and cheaper. Or they may say, you know what, this is good, but it needs oomph. Have you thought about working with these people? I've met a couple of people who work at Image, and, who actually created Image, and they are very much people who are interested in telling the story, but they're interested in the capital as well. So they understand this is a business at the same time. I agree with you. I would love to have my stories out there. I don't care if anybody, however it gets out, and yay, cool, this is my story. Yes, enjoy it. Everyone get to enjoy it. Great. As a unemployed person, I would definitely also like to say that if you happen to give me money for said things so I can create more things like that, again, I would be really happy with that. It's all a matter of what are you doing it for? I mean, you're doing it for the love of it. I would love to do it for the love of it. I imagine you also do it for the love of it. I mean, I think we're all in agreement there.
Yeah, I mean, I have a daytime job, so I don't really have that much of a choice. But yeah, I mean, it is a matter of whether you want to make it in the world with money or if you just want to get your story out there.
Right. So
or both.
Yeah, or both.
And that's always, you think about indie films, indie music, and I'm going to say this. I like View Askew, Kevin.
Oh, yes, okay.
Kevin James, Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith, old man from New Jersey, as another ex-Jersey boy. But the thing was is about Kevin Smith, I consider his first thing, I was saying, somebody asked if View Askew, how do I get a job there? He said, well, you have to be me or born from my mother. And since I'm an only child, it's going to be me. But the thing was is that I consider him a great indie artist, and he was in the 90s considered a great indie artist.
What, like Clerks and Mallrats?
How did he get Clerks made?
Yeah.
He got Clerks made by selling his old comic collection, which I imagine is, like, if he's anything like me, like losing a limb. He maxed out all his credit cards. He got all his friends to do things so he didn't have to pay them as actors. And he literally worked at the store they were filming just so he had a space to film and so that he could like develop at night and shoot at night when the store was closed. He did all this to get that one story out with, as far as I can tell, a a Hail Mary approach, which is this is going to work and people are going to like it, or I go back to the shop and that's my life for here on out. And by miracle, it worked. Now, he transitioned into very mainstream, not just of his storytelling, because he did Daredevil, he brought back Green Arrow from his resurrection back in the 2000s.
I heard he was going to do like a Superman Nicolas Cage or something at a time.
Oh, wow.
And that could be a whole podcast in its own, right?
Actually, there's a movie out there called Whatever Happened to the Death of Superman.
Oh, okay.
Which is all about the creation of that, because he was brought in originally to do he wrote a script and he was brought in to do the revising for that, because they said, we need a geek who knows how to write movies. And apparently their list includes Kevin Smith, and that was it. So this being the 90s of the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin era of movie making. And he did actually come in, write the story, and it's a whole other story unto itself. I do recommend the movie, and I do recommend looking this up because it's just hysterical. And he talks about it in An Evening with Kevin Smith, Evening Harder. But the thing is that he progressed, and a lot of indie artists also, and this goes for comics, they start off really small. They start off in a way where they say, you know what, I don't care if anybody gets this. I don't care if anybody doesn't get this. They want the story out. They need the story out. And I guess as three guys who are creators in every way, shape, or form in this table, everybody has had that situation where I can't sleep. I have to get this story out, or it's going to drill a hole in my forehead and leak out the hard way. You have to get that story out. And when you have a lot of indie creators where they have that, it starts small. It starts very small and works its way out to something massive. Robert Kirkman, again, started really, really small. He did Invincible before he did The Walking Dead. And Invincible was, again, crapshoot. Nobody knew if a deconstruction of the superhero genre would work in the early 90s. Spoiler alert, it did. But then he progressed on to other things. Now he's doing, 2 different TV series, and has actually said, I'm stepping away from writing now so I can breathe.
Yeah.
So that, which would put him very much in the mainstream category. So, again, how many indie artists and comic people also do this? A vast number. Where they start off small and work their way up into, number one, the big boys pay more and more regular. But at the same time, it's a way to just get your foot in the door. Some people stay in it forever. Jonathan Vasquez, again, is probably he went big, realized it was a problem, went back to small, and his small work is still amazing.
So, I guess kind of to sum it up.
Sorry for the ramble.
No, it's all good, Dan. It's all good. It's because this is a podcast and this is what we do. People are washing dishes or driving in the car while they listen to this, but so it's kind of a gray area. Definitely I think it's very subjective to the indie artist, but also to the audience as well. You got that, that catch-22 double-sided, cutting blade to where, you want to share your story, you want to do good, you want to play good, you want to give 110%. That's a Bedazzled reference. I don't know if anybody got that. If not, it's okay.
That's okay.
But
we can't give 110%.
Yeah,
that's mathematically impossible.
That's it. But the thing is at a certain point, when you make it to television or when you make it to the big boy, publishers, maybe you've crossed that threshold. But, in the heart of it, regardless of how successful Kirkman is, how successful Kevin Smith is, I bet they still feel indie at heart.
It is a good question. And if Kevin Smith and Robert Kirkman, if you're listening, we would love for you to answer that question. If anybody hears this, knows their email, please send us there. But it's a good question. How many people who have started off small, progressed to the indie stuff, still feel indie at heart, still feel like it doesn't matter what system they are their story, and they're going to progress from there. I imagine Matt Wagner, great example, still feels that too.
Yeah, and I really think like indie at the beginning is kind of like America's Got Talent. You go and you try out and you see, nobody knows you, but you could end up making it huge. Now, if you go through the process and you're still indie after say 10 years, then there might be a problem there. I mean,
or it's something the only way you can tell the story you want. The guy who started Evil Ernie, a comic, again, not for children. Death, as far as I can tell, still doing it. The guy who created Lady Death is still doing it, even though they created a Lady Death movie that no one's ever seen. But that's what he wants to tell. That's how he's ever going to tell it.
Speaking of Lady Death, I saw Lady Death creator is doing a Kickstarter, and for only like $500, you can have the whole Lady Death collection, and that's a lot of money for Lady Death. And I don't know that I like her that much, but still,
some people do.
But they're like, to your point is they're still out there. They're still creating. They're still on their grind, if you will. But yeah, definitely a huge following. I check out the Lady Death Kickstarter, and I'm very surprised to see how much money he has raised in donations.
The other one on that one has been Patreon. There is at least 2 comic creators, one of which I consider very indie, which is the guy who does Girl Genius. His name is Phil Fulgio, and his wife, Katya. They've been known in D&D circles for doing comic books and comic strips for eons. But they started doing a steampunk novel 10 years ago, and it's still going extremely strong. But they do Patreons to make sure they keep going, because all they have to go by is their ad revenue and occasional sales. But then you have someone like the guy who does Tarot, the Witch of the Black Rose. Again, not for children. But the guy started off doing Catwoman. That's all he wanted to do, and he did a great Catwoman. Now he took a character that was all his, and he's been doing that one for 10 years. But he put it behind a paywall. He says, you can get my comics anywhere that's available, which it is. Or you can go to my online store, you can go to my direct link. He even has a certain place where he says, look, if you want the pages that I'm not allowed to put in the comic, please go to here. And so it's a way of considering doing indie work, even though he's got a name, he's got a reputation, and funding himself to do it.
Are those pages just a bunch of dicks and boobs?
More boobs than dicks, I will tell you that.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
Tarot the Witch of the Black Rose involves a lot of paganism and a lot of boobage. So
interesting. Speaking of Patreon, one of our own comic indie creators, Jay Gillespie, Severed Souls on Patreon. Check it out at comicindie.com. That's just a quick plug for you, Jay.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. It'd be shameless if he was here, but we're plugging for him.
And that's why we're here. We're here to make sure that other people, besides the great stuff we love, the people who we work with and support, get the exposure they deserve.
All right. Well, good. So, Alex, tell us about the book that you brought for us to talk about today.
Yeah, so I got an email from Ryan Little wanting us to review his book, Prometheus. Ryan, thank you very much. I think the artwork is fantastic in here. And Prometheus is just basically a retelling of the Titan of Prometheus. And we have here a lot of Greek mythology. So there is Zeus, we see Hermes, and there's another one here. Who is the other character?
Is it Hera? It's always Hera, isn't it?
Yeah, that's only in the Hercules journeys.
I love those action-packed series.
Apollo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right. So, like you said, Alex, so it's more of just kind of a reimagining, not necessarily a retelling, but what I really liked about Ryan is Ryan, right?
Ryan.
I'm gonna edit this. Ryan, what I really liked about this book, and we're talking directly to you because you are listening to this, hopefully, is that I like that you tell the story of Prometheus. And for those of y'all who don't know the story of Prometheus, go on the Google, step up your Greek mythology game, and just read up on him. But you brought him into current day here, to where he's having to kind of live his old life in the new life. But I don't know that I'm really telling this properly.
Well,
yeah.
Dan, you fix this.
Okay. Basically, one of the things I love about the story is that yes, you have the story of Prometheus. It's again, as Kenneth said, go look at your Wikipedia, or as they would say from the Tick, read a book. That being said, it is the old story of the guy who brought fire from the heavens and was punished for it. Now, that's where the story begins, is his punishment. The great thing about this story from that point on is that while it's set in modern day, yes, it deals with gods and titans and mythological figures, it's a story about revenge. It is a story about trying to get a hold of that which is lost. And at the same time, a story of dashed hopes, which kind of resonate with everybody now as far as I can tell, because it is a story that, again, how is the fire of Olympus being used? And in the story, he makes the argument, which I'm not going to, go in either direction, it's not being used correctly.
So, kind of to talk about that again. So, Prometheus, back in the day, when he was young and not a kid anymore, he stole the fire from Zeus and basically said, here you go, humans. Have fire, live with fire, that's your technology, that's your wheel, move forward and grow. And I guess Zeus and them weren't happy about it. And now flash forward to present day, they've had the fire for a while,
About
right?
3,000-4,000 years.
And now they're using it for Instagram and Kim Kardashian and
cat pictures and trolling.
So I don't know that Prometheus is very happy, and that's why you brought up the revenge, right?
Yeah, because it's also, he brings up a scene, and hopefully, he brings up a concept where he is Prometheus trying to get his power back, trying to get his vengeance, actually asks the important question, this isn't the world we thought it was going to be when we did this. Why isn't it? And that in of itself provokes a great question that the writer has done amazingly well in. It's the why isn't this? And you can see the metaphor for all, those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s. They used to joke in the 90s, where's my jetpack? Well, we have them now. Are we using them? No, of course not. So what happened to the world we were expecting?
Now, isn't a jetpack like the one with the feet in the water? That's kind of like a jetpack, right? I saw a YouTube thing, and he got a Guinness record because he went across some European lake or stream or something. You know what I'm talking about, right?
No, okay, that's the thing. We have all sorts of jetpacks, from the old-fashioned, compressed air that could take you up and over a building, but don't go too far. Or you have but everyone was expecting the Jetsons by now, or Star Trek by now, or anything else by now that we don't really have. We kind of embraced the cyberpunk aspect of life, and he's asking a very similar question. We have all this great technology. We have this wonder at our fingertips. Why is the world not better? Because if 5,000 years ago, no fire, no nothing, no technology, the world kind of sucked. There was a squirrel that could probably eat you if it felt hungry enough. Nowadays, then fire came along and suddenly the world got better. You could cook, you can make stuff, you could light up the night. Great, bravo. Moving forward 5,000 years, did it go well? And it's a good question the writer actually presents.
And it's interesting that you mentioned fire, because I believe that was like the first iteration of the Greek mythology. It was first just a physical fire, and I guess back in the day that must have been great technology. But throughout the ages, or throughout time, that fire has come to represent so much more than just fire. And I think there's like an A script and a B script, and then there's further modifications of what that fire actually means. It further came to mean knowledge, technology, wisdom, and pretty much has taken on so much more meaning. So it's interesting to see his take on it, and it looks like a lot of it has been reinterpretation, because I know in the old mythological story, you get the eagle, Zeus's eagle, picking at his kidney, and every night, it would eat it out, and every morning it regenerate. Well, here there's a physical battle of an eagle and him, and the guy. I mean, it's a man dressed as an eagle.
Which, by the way, I gotta love the almost Mesoamerican luchador eagle that beats the living heck out of this guy every night. I have to applaud that. That was beautiful.
I know, right? He definitely, has some definite eagle powers.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
that's awesome. That is very awesome.
So, I mean, I guess the point is he's doing a lot of reinterpreting. And it's kind of interesting because DC does a lot of reinterpretation. And you can see they've also based themselves off the Greek or Roman gods. The equivalents, I guess here he's just sticking more toward the roots and reinterpret it from there. So I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, and I like the reinterpretations, and I it's just, you can definitely, just from the art itself and just from the writing itself in the beginning of the book, not giving too much away, but you can really feel that tension between, Zeus and Prometheus. You can kind of have them looking at each other, and basically you can tell, like, man, these guys are not happy with each other. I always thought Zeus was a good guy, but in this book, he's kind of a dick. Not very nice.
Yeah.
Hey, trust me, in the stories, he goes a multitude of directions. He's a complex character, even in the ancient stories. Interestingly enough, and I think this also plays into the story that we're reading here, the original Prometheus had his liver removed by the eagle every night. In the old idea, people believed the soul and belief did not reside in the heart. It actually resided in the liver.
Huh.
So basically every night he's having his soul torn out. And in this case, you have a character who has been beaten and bloody for, decades just in the ring. So he's been, like most people with PTSD or who have been in that situation, he's had his soul torn out, and now his vengeance is the only thing that's replaced it in a lot of ways. And I think that's a fascinating use of the character.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he doesn't remember in the story how he escaped. But, going back to Greek mythology, okay, there's got to be some clue here. Well, it turns out Hercules was the one that saved him. So I don't know if he's going to touch on this on later issues.
Oh, man. Kevin Sorbo's coming in. Kevin Sorbo is here. I'm
Better
ready.
him than The Rock, honestly.
Right. You didn't like the Rock Hercules?
I saw little bits and pieces. I have not seen the other thing.
The Rock Hercules was confusing because it was kind of like, well, I'm Hercules, but we're just a bunch of phonies, and we're making you think I'm Hercules. So I was confused.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But there's a number of directions the artist can take, or the writer can take, because it just seems like it is based off personal interpretation. So who knows?
But also, because he brings in the new interpretation of the gods themselves, will we be seeing the pantheon and how they've been doing modern day? Now, there was a question that came up also, which is how does this differ from other interpretations of the Greek pantheon? I mean, there's a couple of books out there. Kenneth, you mentioned American Gods. And Alex, you were mentioning Thor, I believe. As these are reinterpretations of the old legends.
Wonder Woman as well.
Wonder Woman, that's a great one as well. There's a book out there that I read a long time ago called Gods Behaving Badly, and it's all from the point of view of Diana, not Diana Prince, but the goddess Diana, who's living in a London flat with her family who just can't seem to get things right. And it is the entire pantheon of the Greek mythology who are slowly dealing with the situation. They're having to update themselves to the modern day and the problems that come around. So how does this story differ from a lot of things that we've been exposed to?
I think it's very gritty. It's very dark. Even if you just look at the art, and the art is amazing in this book, by the way. Mm-hmm. So, but no, I like the dark undertones. I'm not saying he's a Dark Knight Wolverine. Let's play some of that Johnny Cash cover song. But definitely he's gonna clean house, and he's gonna do something, and it's gonna be badass in the next upcoming issues.
Oh yeah, Prometheus as Dark Avenger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one of the things that was weird is that Prometheus is supposed to be a Titan, yet he seems like a normal-sized human here. So I don't know. I guess the writer, or Ryan Little, you can tell us a little bit more about that. But another thing was Apollo. He just seemed like he was a normal human being.
Was he like the accountant?
Yeah.
For Dawn Industries, because he was the Herald of the Dawn.
If you want to see Apollo as an accountant, please check out Prometheus.
So,
Mystify!
I guess what we don't know is how far from legend are these characters, because it seems like a lot of it has been a grand exaggeration from what they really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the modern telling, there is open to interpretation because I've seen variations where Apollo, because he is both the god of the light and god of the sun, but also the god of prophecy. I've seen one interpretation where, again, he's the accountant of the industries, which he is here, or he may, for all we know, be the president of the company. We don't know. We didn't get that particular detail in the story. But I've also seen times where Apollo makes his living by, and I'm not kidding here, a call-in psychic because he's also the god of prophecy. So how do you take that legend and move forward with it? And I think he's taken a really interesting aspect of it. And yeah, the fact that you have Apollo as an industry, as a company, does that mean Pluto or Hades is going to end up being a president of something because Pluto and Hades is god of the marketplace, not just of the dead, but he's also the capitalist deity. So I'm curious to see where he's going to go with this. I'm curious to see where he's going to go with every aspect of this.
So Neptune, he's working at SeaWorld.
Oh, jeez.
right. And then Hades, he runs the Petco for Cerberus. Or was it Cerberus? What was it? One dog with the 3 heads.
That was the dog with 3 heads. By the way, interesting little note, side note, Cerberus comes from a particular Greek word which defines as a very small speck or dot. So in other words, you have a large 3-headed guard dog who is, when you translate the name correctly, Spot.
Man, we're taking you on like Final Jeopardy, Dan. That's amazing. That is amazing.
I read a lot. I'm on the internet far too often. But yeah, there's I'd love to see what they actually come up with and love to see what they work with. Yeah.
So how would you rate this book, guys?
Okay. Alex, please.
All right, so I guess for me, the art, I'm going to give it a 9.5. It's one of the highest rated art books I've seen yet. So.
Okay. And Dan?
I like the art. It's not. I won't say it's the best art I've ever seen. It needs a little cleaning up, in my opinion. But I think the forms, the shapes, and the really dynamic poses they have, everything, and it's very lovely. The character design is great. So I'm actually going to give it closer to an 8. So I think he did a really, really good job with this.
Okay. And art for me, I'm going to go hit it with an 8.5. I did like it. Very dark, very cool, very anatomically correct. Now I'm a cartoonist, so like nothing really looks anatomically correct to me. So if it looks good, it looks good. But definitely looks good. Originality-wise, Alex, where do you go on this one?
Well, it's not an entirely original story. We are basing ourselves off Greek mythology here, so the originality we'd have to base it more on the retelling. So I'm going to give it more of a 7.
Okay. Dan?
I actually will definitely agree that I think it's a new interpretation of an ancient story. And while we've seen stuff like that previously, what he's doing with it is interesting. I won't say the story yet has said, this is the most amazing new original idea yet, but I think it has the potential for it. In that regard, so I'm going to give it a 7 as well.
All right. And you know what? Let's ding, 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 777 for me as well. Definitely liked it. You know, I know it's challenging sometimes to make a new original story, but I do like the retelling of it, and it has me hooked to go to book 2. Story-wise, Alex, what do you give the book?
I'm going to go for 6.5. I think that the writing definitely has a good direction. I guess it could improve on a little bit of a... I don't know what to say. I guess some of the interactions didn't seem natural to me. It just seemed like, that everybody knew what he was talking about, and he knew exactly how to find Apollo.
Okay.
Okay.
Dan?
Oh. When it comes to this guy, I think he did a good job, but he has a lot of issues that I see a lot of times with some indie comics where, he rushes through a couple of scenes. There's a lot we need to know, and you really need to see that character development for not just of Prometheus, but also of the surrounding characters. This feels like there's a lot we need to know about the situation that we're not really getting. And it's not just the how did he escape or anything else like that. That could be the great mystery for a long time, but it's also the interaction, the development between him and Zeus and him and Hermes. It needs more. It just needs more. He's got something going and he can really develop it great, but he needs more.
Definitely needs more, and I'm hoping that more will come out in book 2. I know book 1s are traditionally more about exposition and just really kind of just getting to know Mr. Prometheus and his neighborhood and where he's living. But this one definitely very successful book story-wise, because I am looking forward to the story of book 2.
And like I said, if you can get you the next 3 issues, that's all you got to do when you have each individual. Can you get somebody to say, "I'll get the next 3 issues to see where this is going"? And if you can do that, congrats, he's got himself a nice hit.
Absolutely. Well, Alex, thank you for finding this book for us to review.
Absolutely.
And thank you to you, Ryan. So, Alex, where can we find more information on Ryan's book?
Well, he does have a Kickstarter, so if you look for his name on Kickstarter, you should be able to find it.
And that would be?
Ryan Little, Prometheus #1. I got it pulled up here. So, very well done, Ryan. Alex, would you say this book is certified by Comic Indie?
Definitely.
Bing! Definitely a Comic Indie certified book. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing this great piece of art with us. So,
And this is going to put you in the running for possibly even Are You the best book that we've reviewed all year? We're going to take a look at that. When you catch us again next year. We'll have more between then, but we'll see what we got. See who really comes out on top as really the great indie book of this year.
For Comic Indie, we definitely like to check out new books that are out there. If you are an indie artist, writer, or creator, and you would like to kind of share your story with us, we'd love to read it and review it. Definitely we're here to uplift the indie community and the artists out there. Dan will tell us a little bit more about what our future intentions are with these podcasts.
Oh, wow. Okay. Our future podcast, besides being a great way to advertise and connect with the indie artists out there, with the not-so-indie artists out there, people who just have an absolute love of the medium, we want to be able to talk to you. We want to be able to share your work and the things that we love. Now, again, at the end of the year, as you saw, we did a scoring of each individual comic, and we're going to decide what was the best comic of the year that year. And as you know, you can keep track at home because we're letting the scores be known. This is actually going to be our scoring system for the rest of the time. And again, if you have an interest, if you think our scoring is too low, we want you to comment, to write us, let us know what you think. And we'll see what we can do with this. Honestly, we're going to see what's going on with that.
Dan, here's an idea. This is just how, creative and off the cuff we are. Why don't we say, as of today, Prometheus sits at the top of the throne.
There you go.
Sir Ryan Little, and company are the #1 book in Comic Indie today. So if you think you can dethrone Ryan, please send us your book. But definitely you have some stiff competition.
Ryan, I tip my tea to you. That would be a jasmine green tea, by the way.
All right. For Comic Indie, I'm Kenneth Javier.
And I'm Alex A.
I'm Danielle.
And thank you for listening to Comic Indie Podcast.